All right, we're going to continue from this topic today, which is the text properties. So last time we talked about the units, and we talked about the color representation. How do you represent color? So we talked about different ways that you can use to represent color, and at the same time, we talked about some of the units that we're going to be using later on here, where we talked about the absolutes and the relative units. And under the absolutes, I talked about the pixels, and for the relative, I talked about the rem, I talked about the percentage, I talked about the VW and the VH, because those are the common units you always use when you are dealing with properties that requires units. So when you're dealing with properties that requires a measurement, and the measurement too needs the units for it. But for today, we're going to see how we can change the property of our text. So all the text that we've been having on the screen, we want to be able to customize the text. For example, like changing the color of the text, or you can change the fonts of the text. But when you're talking about the fonts, there are different settings that you can do on the font there. So we have the family, which is the type of the font you want to use. We have the size, so what the size of your text. So this is what you're going to be using to control it. So how thick is your text? So how thick is that your text? This is the weight property that you'll be using to change it. So the style, from the HTML, we talked about italics and the normal text. So how do you do the same thing from CSS? We're going to be using this font style. Apart from this font style, or apart from the font property for the text, we have some other one that start with text too. So we have the font styling and we have the text styling, but all of them, they are applying the setting on your text. So we have the text transform, we have the decoration, we have the line height, the letter spacing, the word spacing. These not all, but these are the major one that you always use. Most especially all this one here are like that. You always use them a lot there when you are dealing with the text. But all these ones too have their own time for usage, and this line height. Most of the time you don't set the line height, but there might be a particular place where you want to set the height of the line there, and we're going to see everything in action. So for example, here now, look at this site. If you look at it, the way the text are displayed there is quite different from each other. So if you look at this text now, you see that it has its own color there, even though it's using kind of a complex color. But we're going to see how to do this one when we talk about background there. But for the text here, this is just a normal text there. But if you look at the way the P is being displayed here, it's quite different from our own P that we have. Look at the P anywhere on this page, you see that it's quite different. Look at the P here. See that this P down here is having like a pencil mount around it. The same thing with S. So look at the S here, but look at the way the S is on this page. So they are quite different. Or the A too that you are seeing here, because look at the S now. See that it's different. The N we have here, the way it's being displayed here, is quite different from the way we have it on this page. So how do we change this our text? So, and that's where this font family comes in there. I've been talking about this color right from the one. That's why I'm skipping this stuff. Just like I've been using color since. So I'm jumping to this font family. So font family is what you can use to change the family of the text, which is what we use to change the interface or the font face of the text. Because you can change, just like when you are designing from any of these design apps, you can change the way your text is going to look like there. So we have this font family to specify the font face that you want to use for your text. And by default, the browser is using this font known as a serif. So the browser is using a font known as a serif, or the family, because when you're dealing with font family, we have different family that you can actually use. So these are the common family that you always see there. So we have the serif family, which is what the browser is using by default. We have this sans serif. This is another family like that. And again, we have this cursive like that. So we have this monospace. So these are different font family that we have. And under each one of them, you can have different fonts that is coming from that particular family. And what's the family? It means they always have the same kind of a look, but there might be little difference there, but all of them have the same look at them. So we have this serif, which is what the browser is using. So all the fonts that used to come from this serif, they are something like this what is it, Times New Roman. So the Times New Roman, is coming from this family. So Times New Roman is coming from this family, and some other ones like Times, like another font too known as Times. But all these fonts here, they are coming from this particular sans serif, this serif family. So for the sans serif, this is where you'll be having something like area and so forth like that. So Helvetica, whatever stuff. So they are coming from this sans serif family like that. So again, too, for the cursive, any fonts that used to be in a curve form, they are coming from this cursive family. For example, let's go back to that site. You see that there is a text here that is really curved. Can you see this text here? So this one is coming from the cursive family. So this font here now is coming from the cursive. It's not really, when you mention cursive, the browser will check your system and look for the default one for the cursive, but you can actually specify other form that is coming from that family. But every browser or every device you have always have this kind of a default one for each one of the family there. So this one now, this is sans serif, but if you look at this one now, is now using cursive. So both of them are not, even though they are the same text, but one of them is using cursive and the other one is using sans serif, because this is how sans serif used to look like. So sans serif don't have anything like pencil mark. They are always this round shape. But when you're talking about serif, is what we are seeing here. So all the serif used to have this kind of a pencil mark. Not all of them, but they follow that same pattern of a pencil. If you look at the S here now, look at the S. You see that in front of this stuff there is this kind of a sharp mouth that is there. The same thing too at this side. Look at the C too. But if you look at the one on this side, you see that this S is quite different. So this one, any font that is using this kind of a pattern, they are coming from this family known as sans serif. We are going to use all of them. Again, too, for the cursive, I've shown you all this one because there are different cursive that you can use on your page. But the family of the cursive, all those fonts that used to be curved, they are coming from this family, and you can have a lot of fonts that is coming from here and so forth like that. Again, too, we have this monospace. This one you look like typewriter. It used to give you this kind of a font in a typewriter form there. All those typewriter fonts, they are coming from this family like that. But how do you use all these things? Because how do you use all these things on the page? So we can start using them by targeting the element that we want to change the font. So which element do we want to change its font? So let's go back to the page, which is this H1. So all this our H1, we want to change their font family. So we can select the font or the text, and we mention the family here. And once we mention the family, as you can see, the browser has the VS Code have this default one that you can use, because most of them used to be available on your system or you don't have them. So look at it now. As you can see that all these times New Roman and Times, they are coming from this particular family. So the Times is a font, Times New Roman 2 is a font, but these fonts, they are coming from this particular family. The same thing too, if you look at this stretch and so forth like this, can you see that at the end, all of them are coming from what? Sans serif. So all this area, this trench, MS, Lucida Sans, all of them, they are coming from this particular family, which means they will have the same kind of a look on the screen with a little difference there like that. And if I save it now, can you see now? It's changed. See that the way the T used to have that curve, whatever stuff, is no more there again. Because now we are now using sans serif family added. But what we are doing here is that it's not really using the sans serif directly. What it will do is that we are looking for this stretch whatever stuff on my system, this current system right now. If it is available, it's going to use it. But if it's not available, then it will try the next one that follows it. It's not important that you supply multiple fonts like this. You can actually mention one directly and it's going to work. But the problem with this kind of approach is that what if the font is not available on your system? What the browser will do is that to go back to its original font. So if you go back to the page now, let's go back to the page and check. As you can see, it's still working because on my system, there is area there because it's part of the default font. You only anytime you install any window, you always have this area installed for you by default. You don't need to install it. But if I try to use anything that is not on my system, for example, I just put testing like this. There is no font known as this on my system. So if you save it now, can you see? It will go back. So if you put anything that it doesn't understand or whatever font you are using, if it's not on your system, it will just go back to its original setting, and that's why it's not working. So this thing is telling us that the font we are trying to use here, it doesn't know about it. The browser will look for it on your system, but if you cannot find it, then it will go back to the original one. And that's the reason why you can now supply multiple fonts. So that if it's not seeing this one, then try this other one. If you do not see this one, to keep trying until you go to the family and pick the default one. So here now, what I can do is to just type testing. But if you cannot find testing, I know that the font that I want to use is coming from this particular family. So what this thing will do here is that it will firstly check whether whether this font is available on the system. If it's available on the system, it will use it and forget every other thing that you mentioned. But if this one is not available, then it will go to the next one that you mentioned there. So it will keep checking each one of them until it sees the one that it can use. But if none of them is available, you know that it will go back to the original one. And that's the reason why I mentioned this sans serif, because every system always have a default font that is coming from this family. So it will check whether there is this testing, but there is no testing. Can you see that it's still working? But why is it working? Is because this sans serif will go to your system and pick the default one for that family. Every font always comes from a particular family, and on your system there is a default one for that family. That anytime you mention sans serif, what it will do is go to your system and pick the font that is set as a default font for that particular family. The same thing too, if I don't want to use sans serif, I can just use cursive. Right now, I did not mention the cursive I want to use. I just say cursive. So what this thing will do is that it will go to my system and look for the default font that is meant for this cursive there. And if I save it, can you see? See that now the text has changed to this cursive form here. So this is a default cursive font on my system. And this thing is known as, I think, the font is, what is the name of the font? I forgot about the name. The default one for this cursive. It's always installed on your system. There. I used to use it for design that time, but forgotten about it. But it's going to pick that default one that you have on your system, or if it is monospace too, it has the default one too on the system. And once you save, as you can see, it's using monospace default font. Why is it using it? Is because it cannot find this thing that I mentioned. But now if I use a font that it can find, can you see that it's not using this one too? What it will do is that if you can find that first one is seen on that line, that's what it will use. It will forget about the other one that you mentioned. So you can think of all this one like a backup of, so any fonts you want to use, that's the one you mention first. Then if it's not available yet, you can now supply other backup for the user there to use, because later on we're going to be loading some fonts online. Not that because you can't rely on the font on the user system. There's some fonts you want to use in your design that you know that user will never have it on their system. So what do? You download it for them. How do you download the font? You are going to see it later on when we are connecting to all these external fonts, because you can actually install fonts for them. That's why you see, if you notice, if you go to some site, you see that this thing will display one font for you, but after some few seconds, it will now change to another font. What is happening there is that the browser is still downloading the font. So since it's still downloading the font, it doesn't know about it. So it will be using the backup. But once that font is done downloading, it will switch back to the one that you want to use. And there's no way the font you want to use every time will always be on the user system. There's no way you do that, this will be there. So what do? You download it from them. But how do you now use that font? Is by mentioning this font family. Specify the font that you want to use. If there are multiple fonts that you want to give a backup there, you keep mentioning them, separating them by comma there like that. And again too, you'll be seeing that some fonts, they're in a quote. So by convention, any font that have illegal character, you should always put them in a quote. And what are the illegal character? Is like space, all this iPhone, whatever stuff. You always see all those fonts, they are always in quote. If you don't put it in quote, the browser will still interpret it on window, but when you go to other operating system, it might not work correctly the way you are, you're expecting this thing to work. And you know that whatever site you are building, it should work across all the platform, whether you're on window, or you are on Android, or you are on iOS, or you're on Mac, any operating system, this thing should always work, or any browser that you want to use, because that's your job as a developer. Not just you working on one browser alone. You must have all the browser, because you must test it that this thing is working on Edge. It must work too on Firefox, because there is some styling you'll be doing later on that the way you do it on Edge or Chrome, that's not the same way you do it on Firefox. It will not work. You see that it's working on the Edge or anything that's related to Chrome. Once you go to Firefox that is not related to Chrome, you see that that thing is not doing what you're expecting it to do. So, and that's this one, you should always put any illegal stuff or any illegal font in a quote there, or the naming. That's why you see some fonts that the browser is or this VS Code is having here. Anywhere there is space, you see that it will put them in a quote. If you don't put it in a quote, it will still work, but you should always do it like that. So any font that have space there, you see that it's always in a quote to specify that okay, everything is just one item, not separate item, so that the other operating system will not be treating it separately there like that. And as you can see, that time I was typing my area in small letter so that it works. Well, it might not work like that on other operating system. You make sure that you type this in correctly there. But for now, it will work on Windows, because Windows it doesn't care about the case like that. Whether you type it in small or capital letter, it will still be treating them as the same thing. But when you are dealing with Linux, capital letter there is not the same thing as small letter. So it always treat them separately. That's why you should do something that is going to work across the system, because it's working on your machine right now doesn't mean it will work when it's deployed. So shouldn't be like that. So your font, you can specify different fonts that you want to use, and whatever font you are specified there, if you know that that font is not going to be available, you can supply backup. And most of the time, the backup we normally supply is the name of the family, and these are some of the family that you always see in later. Most of the this sans serif, you always see it a lot, because all the sites these days they use font that is coming from that particular family, and that's the reason you see that all the text are like this. So this thing is coming from sans serif, and anytime you go to any site you see something like this, just know that the family there is just sans serif. But the font might not be something that you know, but you know that that font is coming from this particular family. And how do you check? It's something you can check on every site. Just go there, you inspect, and once you inspect, this thing will tell you wherever the stuff is coming from like that. If they set it, let me click on it. So where is this stuff? And if you scroll down somewhere here, it should kind of give us the fonts or the font family. Can you see here? The thing is loading font family. Where are you? So let me go to the computer. I've talked about this computer before, which is the one that show you everything that the browser is using. So if you go under the F, where the family, can you see the family it's using? It's this Satoshi like that. So we have different font, but I know that based on this UI now, I know that this Satoshi here is coming from that sans serif family, because all sans serif always have this kind of a font there without all this pencil mouth, and the more you use them, the more you get used to them. But all of them have this kind of same interface with a little difference there, because sometimes their A used to be different. The way they represent their A is quite different depending on the font that you're using from that family there like that. So make it easier to, can you see the A here? So this is the A here, or the E. Most of the E and A used to change, but they are still coming from that same family that you always see them like that. So we have this like this, and if you check it here too, you see the same thing like that. And G too used to change from the font that you're using for that particular family there. So font family is what you are going to use to change the font of the text that you want in your project. And if you know that this thing is going to be the same across your app, we can use this selector that you know before, which is this asterisk here, which is universal. This one will select everything. So since we want to change the font family for all the text or everything that we have on the screen, you can quickly do it here directly. For example, like this Korea here, and if I disable this one so that it can work for all of them, you see that every text on the screen are going to use the same thing, because we are using the universal selector. But if I change it to H1, you know that it will only apply it on H1. So like that. So font family is really useful anytime you need to change the text, which is something that you always do a lot, because the design that is going to be given to you will not be using the default one that the browser is using. For example, here, these are different designs that we're going to be working on later on. And if you check them, you see that none of them is using the default fonts that the browser is using are there. So they will always use these fonts coming from sans serif there, and they will give you the font, but you know that you need to know the, as you can see, almost all the design always use the fonts that is coming from sans serif there, because that serif is something. But there are some sites that is using serif, like all these crypto sites, and so they use serif a lot, and these monospace fonts are there like that. So the other one that we have there is this font size, which is another property that you always use. So font size is used to just change the size of your text, and there's one of our property that requires units. So when you are dealing with this one now, you need to give it the unit, because you want to change the size of your text, and it deal with length. And since it's dealing with length, you need to specify the unit that you want to use. So for example, here now, all our H1 by default, they used to be 32 pixels. If you don't change the default font size of the HTML. But yeah, I don't want it to be 32, I want it to be 64. But you don't just mention 64. You need to specify the units that you want to use. So yeah, I want to use pixels. And as you can see, it's going to change the size of the text. If you just say 64 like this, as you can see, it will not work. So this property requires units when you are dealing with this value there like that. So yeah, you need to either put the pixels or you use other unit that we've talked about. For example, here I can use this rem like that, and you know what is rem here? It's going to be multiplied by the font size of the HTML, and you know by default the font size of HTML is 16, which means this thing is going to be 6 times 16, and the final value is what the browser is going to use. And if you inspect this thing, you see that that's what it's using. If our font is default to 16 there like that. So we go under the computed and you scroll down to the font size, as you can see, it's using 96. Even though what we type is 6, but it has already converted the stock, because that rem is depending on something, and that thing that is depending on is what is used to generate the value there. And I told you last time, I have an extension that is doing this thing for me. So anything I mention here, as you can see, it will show me the pixels of it like that by using the default stuff. But the font size is what you use to change the size of your text like that. But apart from this font size, we have the font weight. So when do you use font weight? You use font weight anytime you want to bold your text, or you want to change the thickness of your text. You know, from the HTML, we have the B tag to change our text to a bold one, but you can actually control the weight yourself by using the font weight in the CSS. So the font weight starts from 100 all the way to this 900, but it doesn't work for all the fonts. It only works for the font that has the weight that you are looking for. So when we are dealing with online font later on, you see where you can pick the weight. For example, here, this is where we are going to be picking the font later on. So there is a font site, which is this font.google here. So this is where you can use different free fonts on your site, and you connect it so that you can download it for the user once they get to your page. And anytime you want to use any of their fonts, you can actually select the weight that you want for that particular font. Or every font have different weight. As you can see, this is the name of this font is Roboto here. But by looking at it there, you know that this thing is coming from sans serif there. But if you scroll down, you see that there is some other fonts there too that are not coming from sans serif. But most of the fonts you see there, can you see now? By now you know the type of this font, which is this one now is cursive. Because you know that from the way it is here now, you know that this font will be coming from cursive there. Because if you click on it, it will tell you the family of that particular font there like that. If you scroll down to where you are going to, and can you see now? Can you see the weight? So this font now, you only have access to 400, 500, 600, and 700. So normal, anywhere you say regular or normal, is just 400. That's what the CSS is going to generate behind the scene. Anytime you use medium, it's still the same thing as a 500 for this font. Anytime you use 600, it's the same thing as a semi-bold to this font. And anywhere you use 700, it's the same thing as a bold for this font. And if you click on it now, it will tell you how it's going to look like so this is how it's going to look like when you are using font weight of 700. So this is how it's going to look like when you are using font weight of 500. But how do you apply it? So in order for you to apply any of the weight, then this is a property you are going to use. And as you can see the number, can you see that this font that we want, as we want to use this font now, you see that there is nothing like 100, 200, 300. It means when you are using this font for your family there, it means you don't have access to 100 to 300. The only thing you have access to is 400, 500, 600, and 700. So in your code, you can't use anything like this one. You can't use 100. You can't use 200. You can't use 300. You can't use 800. You can't use 900 for that font. If you use them, it will just go back to the default one that it knows about. That is close to that number. So if you use 900 now, if you use 900 or 800, you know the one that is close to them is 700. Then it will just use that one. If you use anything it doesn't know about, it will use the one that is close, that comes before that particular number. So this is where we are going to be picking fonts later on. And there is different fonts, and again, each one of them come with their own particular weight. So if I click on this Roboto 2, scroll down, as you can see that this Roboto now is having can you see that it have 100, it have 200, it have it is not even 200, it only have 300. So it have 100, 300, then it have 400, which is the default one. If you don't specify the weight of your text for your paragraph, it's going to use this 400. But if you don't specify it for all the H1, it's going to use 700 by default. So 700 is the same thing as using both. So the B tag that you're using there, what is doing behind the scene is to set the font weight to 700. Anytime you use B tag, it's going to generate the CSS to send the font weight to 700. That's what it's doing. And that's what all your H1 all the way to H6 are doing behind the scene. They are setting a weight to 700 because that's the bold. Anytime you want bold, just use the font weight of 700 there. Is the same thing. So whether you are using bold or you are using 700, they are the same thing. And for the paragraph, they are using 400 by default. So if you come under this computer now, and if you change the, can you see now the font weight is just 700. So that is why you can see that your text or your H1 is bold. But if you don't want it to bold, then you can change it to any other weight, like this 400. 400 is what paragraph used to use. So if I save it now, can you see all of them will go back to the normal text because we've changed the weight. But if you don't change it, H1 to H6 will set their weight to 700 by default. And if you want to do it for your paragraph too, just mention this property weight and you specify the weight you want to use. Because if you look at the design that I showed you that time, they're like that. There is some text that you have to change their weight, and some you don't even need to touch it because it's there already, like that. So you know that this is going to be like around H1 or so, like that. But if you look at this, some of the text here, see that it is bold. So you need to change the weight, like that. So there's some design that you have to be the one that will set the weight because the browser is not setting it for you when you are dealing with a particular text. So if you need to change the weight of your text, you just need to mention it, and it's going to change the stuff for you like that, depending on the design. You can see this is another design here, and the text will be changing based on whether you want this thing to be bold or not, like that. So later on, when we are dealing with all the design, I'll be using all this property. I won't be going back again to them that this is what is doing, because that's what I'm doing right now. So once we want to do any design, as you can see, this is your heading, this is your paragraph, and so forth like that. But there's some places that you want your text to be bold there, and you don't want to do it from the HTML. You want to do it from the CSS, because anything styling, you want to shift them to CSS, not from the HTML. You use the HTML to generate the element, and you use the CSS to style it. So anywhere you need bold, instead of using big tag, you can do it directly from your CSS by just using the font weight. So font weight is what your B tag is setting behind the scene there. So which you can do yourself instead of using the B tag element. And mostly these days you don't see B tag in a code like that. You only see the style being applied from the CSS there. So this is font weight. Another thing we have here is this font style. This one too is another cheaper one that you'll be using, like, but not that much. So this is what you can use now to do the work of your I or EM that we normally use in the HTML. So this one allows you to change your text to italics or to be in a normal form that you are used to. What is there before, or what is there by default for all elements apart from the I tag or the EM tag, it's only this normal, which means you are not going to see any difference. But here we can change it to italics. So from my CSS, I can change my text from the normal text into the italic one. So instead of you using the EM or the I from your HTML, you are doing it directly from the CSS, because that's what those tags are going to do. What they are going to do is just to change the font style to this EM, which we can see here. So if going back to the page, go to any one of these texts here, like this one, just apply the EM there, or any other one too. Let me use this thing for this one. So let me use I for this one, and at the same time let me use the B for this one. So all of them, all these tags, they are just changing all this property behind the scene there. So going back to the page, and you can inspect any one of them. So if you inspect this one here, or this first one, if you inspect it, can you see what it's doing? It's just changing the font style to italic. So which is something you can do yourself from CSS. So those tags, they are not really doing any special work. What they are doing is changing some CSS stuff. And what are they changing? For the I or the EM, the only thing is just changing is this property here to italic. So for all these B tag, all these B and the strong tag, can you see what they are just doing is to change the font weight. So they are not doing any special work like that. So you too, you can do it directly yourself from CSS by either change the weight on the style of the text that you want to work with, because you want to put all your style in one place, not that you are doing one in the HTML, you are doing another one in the CSS. So you put everything together on that element based on what the design is giving you there, like that. So save this one, and this one should change back to 700 like this. What if I use 900? As you can see, it's no difference, because that font did not support 900. But if you do it with a font that supports 900, then it's going to work. I have a font that supports 900 here. Save. Can you see? Can you see? Now let me go to 700 now. Like this. See that there's difference. So because area is supporting 900, so this is 700. But if you take it to 900, you see that the text is like that more thickness to this text than what we have with 700. So it only works with fonts that have it. Any font you are using that did not have that weight, it will just go to the one that is close or that comes before it, like that. So that's how it works. So here, apart from this, we have the text alignment, and this is what you can use to do this. So look at this design now. If you look at the text, as you can see, it's at the center. So it's not on the left side that we normally have all our text. It's at the center. Some text too can be by the right side there. So you can use this text align to control the alignment of your text. So if I want all my H1 to always be at the center, what we can use there is to use text align, and I will use center here. Now all the H1 we have on the screen will always be at the center, not on the left side again. So all the H1 will always be at the center. See that this one is still by the left, but the H1 is not on the left side there, like that, at the left side. Image. No, we have the way we used to do all this one. When we get there, you are going to see it. But some of these text align too can work sometimes for anything that is inline. When it is inline, like that. But we have a special way of handling the stuff. So by default, it is left. All your text is always by the left, but you can actually take it to the right too if you need a text. So now it means the written is going to be coming from right to the left, like the Arabic this thing. But majorly, what you always be using there is center, because it's already by the left. So the one you want to do is to move it to the center. But there's some design, majorly when you're dealing with dashboard, you see that some text are aligned to the right side of it, like that. So you just mention the side that you want with this alignment. So save, then the text is going to go to the center. The other one that we have here is this text transform, which is very important too when you want to transform your text. If you look at it currently here now, you see that H is in capital letter, while every other thing is in small letter. So if I want instead of me changing the text from the HTML to small letter, I can do it directly from the CSS by talking to it that all the text that is inside my H1 here, I want everything to be small letter. So we have the text transform. So here now we have the lowercase. Once you say lowercase, every text are going to go to small letter. Even though you do not type it like that from your HTML, it will convert everything to small letter. And if you want everything to always be capitalized, then you can use this uppercase. So everything will always be up like this. Even though you do not type it like that on your HTML, it will be like this. Because later on, the data you want to display on the screen, it will be coming from the back end. And you don't know whether the thing is in uppercase or in lowercase. But you know that your design at that place must always be uppercase. So what you can do is that you just apply this property. So no matter the way the text is coming back from the back end there, it will always make sure that it is in this uppercase by using this text transform there like that. For example, there's a design here that everything, I don't think this design did not use it because it's just normal text that is on this design like that. So let me open another design. There's a lot of them here that you can work on later. So let me see, easy banking landing page. So the design, so let's see this design here. All right, so even this one too like that. It's just normal, none of the text is in uppercase. But if you look at this one now, we have O in uppercase, every other thing is small letter. Well, every other thing remain the way it is. Then we have B, every other thing still remain or is in small letter. So which means the starting point of each word is capitalized, like it's in uppercase. So how do you do something like this? CSS to give us another one that we can use it, which is known as capitalize. So what does this one do? What it does is that the starting point of each word is going to be in uppercase. Then the other one will remain the way you type them from the HTML. It will not convert them to small letter. It will leave them the same way you type it in the HTML. But the first one will always be uppercase. So here now, for this text, T is going to be capitalized. Then every other text will remain the same like that. So P is going to be in uppercase. Every other text will remain the way you type it from the HTML. The I is going to be uppercase. The N will be the same way you type it from the HTML, and the same thing too for the other one. And once this thing is saved, as you can see, it's only the starting point that is going to affect. But every other thing, as you can see, that it did not change the CSS because I actually typed them in uppercase in my HTML. So it doesn't touch every other, it only touched the first one. It doesn't care about the other text that is in that word. So it works with word. So this is one word, this is another word, this is another word, this is another word. So the starting point of each word, it will always take them up. The remaining one, it will leave it the way it is. It doesn't touch it. It will leave it the way you type it from your HTML. If you type it in small letter, it will come in small letter. If you type it them in capital letter, it will come in capital letter. But the first one will always change. It doesn't care whether you type it in small letter or not. The first one you always change. For example, now if I disable this one, as you can see, even though I still like that, but let me come down. Can you see this O, the T, and the C? They are typing small letter. But now, if you bring this one back, as you can see, it will convert. It is only the starting point it will change. It doesn't care about the remaining text that follows it. So the starting point of each one of them, it will put it in uppercase, which is something you can do for this one. In case you are not typing it like this, you can use your text transform, then capitalize. So no matter the way you type it there, even if everything is small letter, it will make sure that it is in this way because it will always change the starting point of each one, which is the same thing. As you can see, is the same pattern here too, like that. So, but you see that this one did not follow the pattern because the C is not, but this one it is. So it means you have to be the one that will type this in yourself because you don't have the way to do it like this. If you do it from CSS, it will change this C to uppercase. So it doesn't leave it the way you'll be expecting it to leave. So the transform here is what you can use to transform your text from the lowercase to the uppercase, or from the uppercase to the lowercase, or you can capitalize each one of the stuff there. So these are the available So we have capitalized, lowercase, uppercase, or none, which is something you don't use like that because it will just go back to the way you type it in the HTML, which is the same thing as you are not typing this in at all. But there are some places you need it, but I've never used it before, say, like that. Or I've used it, but let's say it's not even up to 1%. But majorly, what I normally use is that uppercase or the lower case. You always use all those one or capitalize. You always use it. But this none is just like you are not typing this property at all. Like it will use the same thing that you use from your HTML there. So why do I need to type it and put none? Since it's going to use whatever I have in my HTML. So this is the transform. So the other one we have here is this text decoration there, and this one is really useful. If you look at your A tag by default, you see that they normally have this kind of a line, or the A tag by default used to have this underline under them. So how do you do it? That's where the text decoration comes in. You know, you can actually put underline under your text by using the U tag. So you can do it directly from CSS by using these the text decoration properties. So it allows you to change the different type of decoration, and one of the decoration is the underline. So when you're dealing with text decoration, there, this is one of the shorthand property that we're going to be seeing later on. Because some of these property here, you can use them to change multiple properties at once. So some of the property you'll be seeing later on, you only type one letter, but that, or not just one letter, you only type one property, but that single property will be changing other properties on that element. And any property that can do that, we call it shorthand property, because it's just a single property, but it's changing a lot of other things on your element. And one of them is this text decoration, because there's a lot of things that's related to decoration. But with this single property, you can change all of them at once. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So we have this text. So we have the decoration. Can you see? So when you are talking about decoration, you have the line, we have the color, we have the skip ink, we have the style, and we have the thickness. So text decoration now, these are the things you can change about it. But with this single property, text decoration, you can change all this one at once. With this single property at the top, you can change the line, you can use it to change color, you can use it to change the style, and you can use it to apply the thickness at once. And since it can change all this one, so we call that text decoration as a shorthand property. You are going to see other one too later on too, like padding, margin, background. They are shorthand property because that single property can change a lot of things that's related to background. So, and how do we use it? So when you are using text decoration, so with this single property here, can you see it can help you to change what? The text decoration line. It can help you to change the style. It can help you to change the color, and it can help you to change thickness. So with that, with this single property, you can change 1, 2, 3, 4 at once. So since it can change all this in at once, then it is known as shorthand property. You can still use all this one on a separate line, but instead of you calling this 4 property, you can just call this single one to change all of them at once. So which one do we have there? We have the style. What style or what type of line? Because this is the most important stuff here. What type of line do you want to use? So one of the line we have here is this underline. So apart from underline, we have overline or we have line through, which you normally see on Jumia like that. Line through is you know, you have the price. They have their normal. I think they should be doing that because this is November that they used to do their flash or nonsense sale. So Jumia .ng, you are going to see their discounted price and you are going to see the original price. But you know the original price, you see that they draw the line. So how do you do something like that? So there's this text decoration that you are going to use to do it on the text. Because don't forget, it's the text that you are going to have there like that. Can you see down here? So that the original price is 17 whatever stuff, but the price they want to sell it is 15 stuff. So how do you to do something like this? So we can you see here? You see that this one is cross, so there's a line on top of it. So we have the line for that too. So let's go back to our page and see how we can do something like that. And I think I've talked about HTML entity code too. So like this. So let's do something like that. Let me go up. So we have the price. So I will just have the P, or let me have a div with pricing. So inside this class, I'm going to have the P. The first P is going to have the this stuff like that, which is going to be 8358 like this. And what is the price? 17,500. This is the price we want to sell, but the stuff is actually 22,500. So save, and we should have the naira in front of the stuff like this. But I don't want them to be on a separate line. You know, now we can use what? We can use span inside the stuff. Now I told you span is inline element. So whatever you put inside it, it will be on the same line. Even though here it is separate, but on the page it's going to be on the same. No, don't forget P, they are block. But right now we've not talked about property that we can use to change them. So that's why I'm using span. So what do we want to do? This first span, it will remain the same way, but the second span, we want to draw the line on top of the stuff. So we can use this our text decoration. Right now, if I save this code, you see that all the H1 on the screen, they have underline. So, but we don't want to use underline on this one. We want the line to be at the center of the text. So that's where we can specify other types. So here now, I have this pricing. Inside it, I have span, which is of last last child here. So last, we've talked about this, you know, I'm now combining all the selector together. I'm looking for the span that is inside pricing. But it's not just any span, it must be the last one there. No, there are two. So I'm not focusing on the first one. I'm only focusing on the last one that is it. See all the selector. But instead of me doing something like this, you know, I told you for every crazy selector, there's always a simple selector. Instead of doing it like this, I can just go to that element, give that one to its own class, and I will just target it based on that class. So it all depends on which method you want to use. And that's the reason I have to kind of teach you everything, so that anytime I'm using any one of them, it will not look as if I'm doing one Chinese stuff. So this one I can just say line like this. So instead of us targeting it in this way, I can just target it with the class. So both of them will work. For example, here now, if I use this one, the color, it is red like this. Can you see that it's targeting it? And at the same time too, if I want, I can do it from here too. So color, then blue. See that both of them are targeting the same element. But this one is more complex than this one. So you can target your element in different ways. It's not less for you to choose which one you want to use. It all depends on you. But you need to know different selectors that we have. So based on that now, you now decide, should I use this complex one or should I use the simple selector? So it all depends on which one you want to use. Both of them will work, but I will go with that up one there. So I'm going to change the color to red. Again, too, we want to use this text decoration now. So what type of decoration we want to use? You know, the one we know is the underline. As you can see now, it's putting the line under, but we don't want it under. We want it to be at the center. So instead of doing that, we have this other one known as this line through. So this is another type of line that we have, which is the one that the Jumia is using there. So if we save this one now, as you can see, it will draw the line on top of the text. Like this. But what if you want it to be at the top? I've never used this one before. So which is known as overline. This one is known as overline, but I've never used it before. It will put the line on top. The one I normally use is this underline or this line through. Almost all the design I've seen, I don't see them putting the line on top, but CSS have the option in case you want to do something like that. But now, you see that the line is using the color of the text. What if I don't want to use the color of the text? I want to use another color. So you can use this property too to change the color of the line. If you don't change the color of the line, it will be using the color of the text by default. If the color of the text is blue, it means the line too is going to be blue color. If it is red, it's going to be red. If it is brown, then it's always use the color of the text. But I don't want to use the color of the text. I want to change it to something else. So here we can, don't forget this same property here. It's helping us to change the line. You can use it to change the style. You can use it to change color, and you can use it, and that's what I want to do now. I want to use it to change the color. So when you want to supply all this property, just give a space, and you mention all this, four properties or any one of them that you want to use. So the one I want to use there is the color. So here now, I don't want to use brown as a line color. I want to use blue. So the text is not going to be using the text color again. It will now be using its own color that you mentioned. If you don't specify the color, it would look at the text color, and that's what it will use by default. But if you want to change it to another thing, as you can see here, you just mention the color. For example, here gray. So the line is going to be gray, but the text is that brown color, or the text is going to be blue, but it will never use whatever you have on it. It will be using the color that you put. But what if you want to change the style? Because we actually have different style that you can use for your line there like that. So we have different style that you can use. So we have this dash, which is going to be this dash dash. It's not dot. Oh. The dash is a square, while the dotted is a circle. So let me use it so that you can see it. So we have this. Let me use the dotted, or let me use double. So this now is going to make it a double line. Let me take the thickness too. So you can change the thickness. For example, like 3 pixels. So, but let me use underline. Underline used to be clearer than this line through, so that you see what is going on. Underline like this. So save. As you can see, the line is double. But you see that that thing is thick. It's because I'm using thickness here. But if you don't use it, it will generate the default one. But I can use 1 pixels here, which means the line is going to be, the thickness of each one of them is going to be 1 pixels. If I use that 3 pixels, or if I use 5 pixels, you see that the thickness is now, so you can change the thickness of the line. But the same, this single property is the one that is changing all this property on one line, and that's the reason why we call it shorthand property. So the shorthand property can help you to change multiple property on one line without you mentioning those property like that. So the text decoration will change the type of the line. Then you can specify the color. You don't need to arrange it like this, so you can arrange it anyhow. So if I want, I can just put this other one at the end like this. It will still work. So it doesn't care how you arrange them. So you can start with color, you can start with style, you can start with line. But the one I normally start with is most of the time I used to start with the thickness. And the same thing, because we are going to be doing something like this too for border later on. But I normally start with the thickness so that I quickly know the thickness of the stuff. So this is how I used to do it. I used to start with thickness, then followed by the type that I want, then followed by the style, if there's anything like that. Most of the time is this style that you want. If you don't want to mention it, and then if you need or any other thing, it's going to come outside too, like this. Most of the time, this is what you need. Not but if you want to change the style, so we have double, which is something you've seen already, or we have this dotted, as you can see. So dotted is like a circle, but it's dot 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 dot. Or you can use this one here, which is this dash, like that, as you can see. So it's a square, it's not circle. So they are different between dotted, even though it look like they are doing the same thing, but the shape is different. So the dotted is circle, while the dash is this. Or you can use double like that. So this is, but you can actually change each one of them on a separate line, or you can even modify it too. So instead of you using this shorthand property, you can just mention, but this one, the reason I don't use them because it's too long. That is why there is a shorthand property for them. But look at what you have to type to change the line. So this one now you can now mention underline or whatever you want to change to be line through. So to change the line now, this is a property you have to type. But you can actually do it with this shorthand one that you are doing everything. So everything we are doing on this line, if you want to do it on their own, you have to mention 4 properties on a different line. So again, we're going to have the text, decoration, then you have the color. So this one is going to be red. So this one is going to be red. So text, decoration, then we're going to have the thickness, which is going to be 3 pixels, like this. So which other one do we need to mention? So we need to text, decoration, style, like this, which is now going to be dotted. So the same thing that we're doing on this line, one line, is what we are doing on this 4 line. So you can either do it like this yourself, or you use the shorthand property. I always go with shorthand property because it's kind of as simple. You see everything on one line, like that. But you can actually specify each one of them on a separate line. So this same thing that we're doing on 4 line, you can do it here on one line by saying 3 pixels on the line like this, then dotted and red. So this one line is the same thing as this 4 line is doing. So most of this property, I always use the shorthand because it's kind of a short compared to typing on this long stuff that we have there. So whether we have this 4 or like this, or we have only that first one at the top, it's going to do like, oh, this one is, no, it's line through. Let me change it. Line, where are you? Line through. So save, we get the same thing. So whether you do it on one line like this, or you do it like this, you have the same results. So shorthand kind of easy to work with, except background. It's only the background I know that its own shorthand is crazy, because the arrangement there, the way you type it will determine how it's going to work. You know, this one now you can arrange it anyhow, but background you can't do it like that. There are a pattern you need to arrange. Even VS Code self, you don't have that pattern, so the VS Code will not help you out, because background is kind of a complex when we get there. So we won't be using shorthand for background. We have to mention all these properties so that I can get it, because its own shorthand is crazy. But every other shorthand are quite easy, because VS Code will give you what you need to do on that line there. So this is the text decoration. So the other one we have there is this line height, which is something I don't think we'll be using like that, but it has its own place of usage when you are dealing with text. So when you are dealing with text, and that text is going to or it's having a multiple line there, so you always want to use line height. And what is the line height? The line height is talking about the height of the text that you have there, the height. So this is one line here. Let me use my drawing this thing so that you can understand what is going on. Wait, bring this in again. So the line height is very important when you have multiple lines. So for example, here now, look at this stuff. So this H now, the height of a line is from here to here. So this height is from here to here, like that. And you cannot use this line height, because the browser used to do some setting out of the box for them. Sometimes you see that the line height is going to be like this, and that's why you see that there is this white space here. So what is this white? Where did this white space come from? Where is it coming from? It's because the browser is actually setting some height for your text. Even though your text is here, but the height or the line height, because this is one line here, so the height of this line is actually stopping here. So how do you now control that line? There is a line here. There is one imaginary line here. So there is one imaginary line here. So this is a text. This is where your text is stopping. But that doesn't mean the line here, because this is one line, this is another line, and this is another line. Just because your text is stopping here doesn't mean that's where the line to stop. So the actual line is actually from here all the way to this side, and that's why you see that there's some extra space in between each line. So with this line height property now, you can control that spacing that you have in between each line of your text there, like that. So, and how do you use it? The way you use it, it's depending on this. It can work with units and it can work without units. When you are using it without units, it has the way to work. When you are using it without units, it has the way it's going to work. But the major thing here is that it's changing the height of your text like that. So if you inspect this your text, so if you inspect the text there, so let me inspect it so that you see it. Each one of not showing it the way I want it to show, but let me apply the property here. So line height, you can use it without units. So please, when you are using line height without units, the final value is going to use here is going to be the number you type multiplied by the font size of that element. So the line height is going to use anytime you use a number without units. What is going to do is that number now will be multiplied with whatever font size of that element. So which means here now, the line height we are trying to apply here is 1 times this 3 rem. So which means here it's just as if you are typing 3 rem here. So once you mention line height and you're using 1, what that thing will do is that the number there will be multiplied by the font size of that element. And whatever the result, that's what is going to use as the height of each line there. So if I save this one now, you see that You see that that spacing now has reduced. So which means the line, each of this line, their height is going to be that particular 3 rem that we are using. And why is it 3 rem? Is because we are using 1 here. You know, 1 multiplied by anything will always be that number. But now what if I use 2? What we are doing here now is that the height of this element now, or the height of each line, this is the one line, this is another line, this is another line. So the height of each one of them is going to be 2 multiplied by what? The font size. Anytime you don't put unit there, it will take that number multiplied by the font size. So which means here now, the height of each one of them is going to be 3 times 2, which is 6. But don't forget, it's not just normal 6, it is 6 rem. And you know that 6 rem is the same thing as 96 px. So by the time this thing is saved now, as you can see, the height now has increased because it's now like double, which is what you normally do in your Word. Now you do double spacing, single spacing. That's the same thing like line height is doing here. That spacing that you normally do in Word document, this is how to do it in this place. That you'll be increasing the, okay, use double spacing or use 1.5. So yeah, too, if you want your text to be 1.5 there, what you do, instead of 2, then to be 1.5. And if you save it now, you see that it's now using the 1.5 spacing, the way it used to be in Microsoft Word. That one is when you are using a number without unit. And this is how I want you to always be doing it, because this thing is depending on the font. If the font change, no, don't forget, it will recalculate the new value. So here now, if you change the font from 3 to 2, like this, then the value now, as you can see, it will recalculate the value. Then whatever it is going to be using there, it will be 2 multiplied by this 1.5. When it is 4, it will increase. So now if you change it to 4, as you can see, as the text is increasing, it's calculating its own 1.5 spacing there. But if you are doing it yourself, once you change the font size, you need to come and do this one too. If you don't do it, you see that it will be doing some nonsense stuff for us. For example, here now, instead of us using the relative unit there, you can actually use 4 rem here too. As you can see that it's just as if you are using 1 there. When you use 1, you need to just be 1 times whatever the font size. Now imagine that we reduce this one. So now we reduce this to 3. So we reduce this one to 3. No, we did not change this one like that. You see that it's calculate the value now. You see that that spacing is not 1 again. It has changed. Now imagine I'm using maybe like 1 here like that. So let me even increase it. Let me use a number that is going to have multiple lines. So let me increase it. Can you see what is that doing? Why? Because it's still using 4 rem as the spacing. But don't forget, the text is actually bigger than that. The height is 7. But you are saying you want the line height of it to be 4. So what it is going to do is to just join them together, because there is a shortage of 3 rem there now. We said we want 4 as the height of the line, each line. But we said the font size of each one of them should be 7. No, as this thing is getting increased, the height will increase. And since you say you want 3, what did they do? It will keep going inside each other. And that's the reason why you don't want to be using unit here when you are dealing with line height. Instead of you doing it like this, always just use normal number. So once you change the font, it will recalculate its own value. So now if you change it to 1 back, as you can see, it will work. And if you remove this one from 7 now, maybe we change it to maybe like 10, you see that it's still working. See that it's not changing, even though we've increased the font, because it will always, the value here is always depending on the font, and it will always multiply them together. So whatever the font change, this one too will recalculate its own value. But if you are doing it yourself by putting unit, you need to make sure that the unit you are putting here is matching the height of the font size. But if you go and use something that is less than the font size, it will join the text together. You have to use something that is equal or bigger than the font size of the, and that's why you see that I'm using 1, so that it will multiply by this, it will use 10. But if you go less than 1, for example, I'm using 0.7. By the time this thing is multiplied, it's going to reduce the number, and which is now less than the height. And since it's less than the height, you see that the text will start entering each other. Because now the value that is going to give us here will be less than 10. And we know that the height of the stuff has to maintain 10. So it will start joining them together, because they can't go less than 10. The font size is already like 10 like this. But you said the height should be something like this. So what did they do? It will keep shifting them to join each other like this. So most of the time you only see that you want to use one, and again too CSS has some predefined value that you can use for it, so which is this normal like that. So you can just use normal, which is going to do around that, I think 1.5 or so, depending on the browser. The thing will handle, each browser have their predefined value for this normal like that. So as you can see, determine the prog, whatever stuff, so Edge, Firefox, and so stuff. So but I don't want to depend on the browser. I want to set it myself. So I only set this in myself. And again, too, when we are dealing with Figma later on, like for you, like the software they are using to design the prototype, the design. So because you need to be able to know how to use it, where you go there and see the dimension, like the size and all those things. So you'll be seeing all this property will be generated for you there like that. But for now, I'm just going to set it to 1. This thing is really big. So let me go back to this. So the line height is really important when you need to control the spacing in between the line. It's still the same text, but that line, the text is going to multiple lines. So each line, what do you want to put in between them? So you should always use 1 or anything greater than 1. If you use less than 1, it will keep joining the text together because it's not less than the fonts of the stuff there. That's how this thing works like that. So the other one that we have there, the other two that we have is this letter spacing and this word spacing. Just like their name, they help you to space your word or to space letter. For example, here now, you know, the H, the E, the A. What is the spacing in between them? That is the letter spacing. But when you're talking about what is the spacing between heading of the and container, that is word spacing. So if you want to have a spacing in between the word, you use the word spacing. If you want to have a spacing between each letter, you use letter spacing. And there's some design like that that the text are not jam-packed together like the way it is there. You need to give them a space. So you are going to be using this property to change that. And I think there's a design here. If I can still remember the design like that. So there is a design here that actually have something like that. So let me see. It is this let me check the name. No. Managing multi-step news product summary. It should be the other summary. It should be this. It should be this. No, it is not. It's close to this. Product list, product card. It's somewhere here. It should be somewhere here. Yeah, I think this is it. So let me look at the design. So look at this perfume. Can you see the spacing between the E and so this is where you can use letter spacing. So you want to space each letter from each other. Because normally it will not be like that. But the design is telling you that it has to be spaced. And you don't want to be, that's why you'll be doing it in your code that you'll not be putting the spacing yourself. No, it will come from the CSS. Look at the spacing between this G and A. It's not the same thing as this P and E. And if you look at it, you see that the font on this one is not the same thing as this. So everything that we talked about today is what you are going to use to do everything here. Because you see that the font of this one now, see that it looks like that pencil mark, which means it's coming from the serif family. But it's not actually Times New Roman or Times, but it's coming from that family. Why all this one is coming from the sans serif family? Because you know that all the serif family used to have this kind of a pencil mark like that. So you see the application of everything, the same thing here too, as you can see. Can you see what we talked about? The strike through whatever stuff. So you always see them in the design there. So how do we do that one? So we can use our letter spacing here to give spacing in between each letter. So for example here now, each letter should be spaced by 3 px. So this is how we have it currently. Now if I save it, can you see now? Each letter will now be spaced from, you don't overdo it because the text will not be readable again when you overdo the stuff. And you don't do it with multiple words. You do it with just one word so that it will be more, because now here now if I do it more than this, maybe I use 10 pixels, you see that it will start creating a gap that you don't want and the text will not be readable again. Most of the time if you do it with paragraph, the text will not be readable again because there's a lot of text there and everything will just space from each other anyhow. But you can use it to space each letter. It's spacing the letter. not the word. So if you want to space the word, then instead of it to be letter, then it's going to be word spacing. So here now, can you see that it's not spacing the letter again? It's spacing each word from each other like that. So for example here now, let me use a bigger number. You see that the spacing between heading of the and container is going to be this 20 pixels. Or if I use a bigger number, as you can see, the spacing between them is going to be this 200 like that. But if I do it with letter, this is crazy like that, because letter is too much like that. So it will not be readable again. So you only do it a little bit. Like that's why I say I use 3 pixels. You don't, when you're doing letter spacing, it's just little spacing that you give. Not that the spacing will be too much, because if it's too much, nobody will be able to read the stuff again. It will just be doing nonsense that you are seeing right now. So we have letter spacing and we have word spacing. All these properties, you don't use them, you use them based on the design. Just like that's why I need to show you different design that you use them, because you don't just use them anyhow. You look at the design you are working on. Based on the design, then if you look at it and see that the line height, this one is like the height in between them, and it's around that 1 or so. So if it's not giving you this kind of line height, then you have to change it so that it works the way you're expecting it to work like that. So that's what you'll be doing, because most of the time the line height is always the same thing across board. Because if you look at it, it's still the same 1 line. But maybe when you type the stuff, the browser is not using that one. So you have to be the one that will change it to what you are expecting there like that. So yeah, that's going to be all for today. The next class here, we're going to be talking about tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the background properties. So we should be able, like tomorrow now, we should be able to start applying background on our design, just like the way you see it on different design that they have background. As you can see, this at the top, they have the color as their background there, but it's not only color, you can use image too as background. So we're going to see how we can do all these things tomorrow here. Like how can we put the same thing here too? As you can see, there's a background there. So how can we do all these things? As you can see, the stuff we talked about today is what they are using here. Can you see that there is that underline and it is dotted that they use it? So that's just it. So you don't just use them anyhow. You use it based on what your designer is giving you like that. So it's not that every time you just use all of them. You use it according to what you are seeing on the design like that. So that will be all for today. Let me stop recording.